Hello everyone, Tinkotinev here, and um, I want to present a concept that comes as a result of the idea of an ideal society that reflects a loving family. So I discovered I'm very interested in economics, and I love to observe economic processes and um, how different political affiliations or views affect real life and the economy. And I've been observing the post-communist countries, and of course the communist countries while they were communist. My country was communist, but communist countries that exist now that claim to be leaders in showing models, economic models for the future that could possibly serve, according to what they claim, as a base for an ideal society or a future society. But strangely, um, the level of abuse in communist countries is actually quite astonishing. Um, and the centralization of money and power uh, is characterized as corruption. So it's like the question is, okay, like this doesn't work. Capitalism is prone to abuse as well. Um, Again, similar phenomena, and all the failures, like many people would say, oh, it's the system that is broken. So the communist system doesn't work, and the capitalist system doesn't work, or the socialist and the capitalist, they don't work. But upon closer look, it's not the systems that don't work, but it's the people, because I think in both cases, um, or also historically, we can observe societies that are more equal and just, and societies that are not equal and just. So as a default, the communist countries are not equal and just. Like the way they're formed, the way they oppress people and create slave-like societies and slave labor, it doesn't create the liberation that they claim they should create. Capitalist societies as well, many of them, they don't. Like mainly the European kind of countries that come as a consequence of monarchies or even current monarchies. There is a centralized power and authority. So the the management mindset is not to cater to the people, and even catering to the people, what does it mean? Like it's a very stretchy concept. So I was thinking, okay, what can we use as a model to have like a baseline on which we can characterize the parameters of an ideal society, and um, by observing like different things in life, and also um, through the work of Reverend Sun Myung Moon, um, religious teachings, but also his guidance for the transformation of many different sectors of society. Uh, it kind of his idea, or the idea that God gave to him about the original ideal world, that in the original variant before the fall of Adam and Eve, we were supposed to develop a global community that was like one family, and I've been trying to understand what this means, and it's actually a very interesting concept, because in a way, in more tolerant and inclusive societies that do not discriminate based on beliefs or based on skin color, we see this kind of brotherhood, like genuine brotherhood of men, where people from different backgrounds and different clans, they share they share the same opportunities and can excel based on their own efforts. So it's not whether your ancestors made money or accumulated wealth, but you could do this yourself. And this is quite interesting because what it resembles is not ideally, but what it resembles is a loving family. So what is a loving family? A loving family is a unit where the husband and the wife they can find in themselves enough reasons to stay committed to each other and to try and take care of each other, and their children, their household and their children. They try to maintain their property, they care of their material things for themselves and for their children. And in a way, they kind of maintain wealth. And this becomes like wealth for the community as well. If they have many children, then they could have more property or manage more things just because the number of people is larger. But the economic dynamic in the family is very interesting. Um, uh, I call this the family economic system, and it's very different from the socialist and from the communist system and from the capitalist system, because value of life in the family, in the loving family, is not derived from labor and capital. Value of the children, of the members of the family, is based on love. When a child is born, it has inherent value, and it's more precious than parents feel that the child is more precious than themselves. They feel this child has incredible value, and they have natural desire to take care of it, because a child is completely unable to take care of itself. So Maslow's pyramid of needs is wrong, actually, because it assumes that fulfilling the physiological needs is primal to a human existence. But the actual primal need for a human being is to be loved. Because if there is nobody who will lovingly commit to nurture this life, a baby cannot eat, a baby cannot sustain itself, so a baby will die if no such person appears. So the parents, they have this natural feelings of love that emerge as the child is born, and most parents, they say that the birth of a child completely transforms their life, and from this kind of person that can enjoy life, and suddenly they become people who are very committed to another person. So they commit to each other as husband and wife, but also they're committed to the child, and this child symbolizes both of them and both their lineages. So even their parents and their relatives can look upon this child and say, oh, this is a precious, and it's us, like it's an extension of our own self. And this is biologically designed. So it's just the way it unravels itself through biology and through life. So the parents, they have full commitment to their children, and they also commit to generate the wealth and the capital necessary for their own existence and survival, and the existence and survival of their children. So in a way, it's like a church community where the efforts of others take care of the few more unfortunate people, and it's a just society where the ones that cannot produce value are not ignored, but are cared for equally or even more than those who, in a way, the ones who create the value, the parents. They feel their children have more value, so they would even not buy things for themselves if they had to choose between buying things for themselves and buying things for their children. So they would choose to buy things for their children instead of themselves, because they feel the child is more important. So this we can also derive a management standard. So we can say, as managers, parents not only commit to generate wealth and income, for themselves and for their children, but also in terms of managing their family, their children, they do so with love and care, and there is no product. The product is the life of the child. So there is no product that is sold or a service that is sold. Like I was thinking, if parents were to be like selfish, if they were to assume a selfish standard, equivalent to the standard that we find in the external world, satanic world, where people don't see inherent value in each other, and where money is exchange of value, and those who control money feel like their value is far above the value of the people who work and have to work for their money. So if parents were like bankers, they would calculate the expenses, not just the physical expenses in terms of food and electricity and gasoline, for example, that they have to spend today for taking care of each child, but they would also calculate their own a salary for themselves and say, okay, this is how much my care, according to today's market value, would cost the care I provided for you as my child. So if they were bankers, they would add up all these costs per day, and they would add an interest on this amount that would generate monthly, as bankers do. And when their child becomes 18 years old, they would present the child with a bill of how much their parents spend. So there will be the main part of the cost, which is the actual sums spent and the salaries that were not generated, plus the interest for every month accumulated over the last 18 years. And plus the interest, because most probably the child cannot pay this money at the age of 18. So there will be future interests on top of this money that are being calculated every month until the child repays the loan or the investment of the parent and the interest on the investment. So even the greediest of people do not set such a standard of relationships in their family. So it is really mind-blowing to me that we accept such behavior in regards to other people. That people would look at other people and see no value in them except their labor and the capital they can generate from them. So for me, this is a clear indication that this is a satanic culture, an abusive, very unfair, very unjust. And this is why the left and the right agree that this is unfair and unjust system. But the left and the right don't have really a solution. So therefore, we really need a family party. Like, this is the only solution. We need to have a family party that caters to the needs of the families and not to the needs of the proletarians or the capitalists. Because the proletarians and the capitalists, when they finish their day, they go home to a family as well, most of them. So having a family party really can address the issues, and having a family party that has this kind of economic model as its baseline, the family economic model. So from this point of view, for example, like in order to transition from the current system into the new system of governance, which is the law-based system of governance, where the government is there like a parent in a family, is not there to receive a salary. Public servants should not be receiving salary if they were in position of parents. They should provide public service voluntarily and lovingly, and with a sense of gratitude that they can contribute to the development of the future generations, as parents do, at their own cost even. So if you're a public servant, you should work make money and invest this money in the public service to pay for the public service and not receive salary from the public service. I know it sounds mind-blowing and very shocking, so don't just dismiss the idea, but really think about it. Think about what parents all over the world, in every culture and in every nation, are doing every day. The estimates that the Forbes magazine made are that in America, the stay-at-home parent generates $115,000 worth of services per year. So not only is not the stay-at-home parent not unemployed, they're making incredible contributions to the national budget, donations. They're donating their service to the nation by taking care of their children. So to have people look at them, public servants, not just people, not just any people, but public servants who benefit and who are paid with the taxes that this parent pays and that their spouse that works pays, and for everything they buy in the shops, the VAT tax and the sales tax and all the taxes accumulated, they pay for the salary of the public servant, who then turns around with a very high salary, maybe twice, 3, 4, 5 times, 10 times higher than the average taxpayer. They turn around, they look on the taxpayer and spit in their face, and they treat the taxpayer with incredible level of disrespect and absolute lack of gratitude that the taxpayer is paying their livelihood. I find this absolutely disgusting. And from this point of view of like seeing the world as a world that can be one family, and the standard that we exercise in our own family to take care of our own children, with the mindset that we will work and generate the necessary capital, money, and we can buy things to take care of ourselves and our family at our own expense and without passing on the burden of this expense to our own children. This is the highest standard of a loving parent. To have enough, to make enough effort, to generate enough income, to take care of their own children, to have where to stay and live and take care of their children, whether it's rent or bought. And then again, even the question of renting and buying, it's actually a funny one, because if we have a state and the state can regulate property, which means the state assumes that the property doesn't belong to us. The land belongs to the state. So the property on the land, in many cases, doesn't really belong to us. It belongs to the state still. That's why many times the state can come and claim for like an infrastructure project. They can claim the land and give compensation to the real owner of the land, who bought the land and took care of the land or built properties and buildings on the land. So it's very interesting that the state assumes this absolute control, but it doesn't assume the position of care for the citizens of the nation. And I created this concept, which came as a result of observations of not just my own country, but many countries in Europe and internationally, the way that the taxpayer is being treated by the state and by public officials, public servants, with incredible level of disrespect. And I even would say, when someone is, for example, becomes unemployed or needs social welfare, when they come in contact with the public servants, what is interesting to me is that suddenly the public service and the state that knows everything about this person acts like it has a severe case of dementia, and asks the person who comes to claim social welfare to go through incredible effort to prove that they are themselves in order to receive a public service that is they're entitled to. So it's not even like, this is also another thing. Like, if you're entitled, why do you have to apply for why don't people get job seeker allowance the week or the month, depending on how they're paid, the month after they've quit their job? Just they don't have to apply. They know immediately. Like the state, it's very clear that in the systems, that in the tax systems, they have been fired or they've left their job. So they can just receive a paycheck for this, that they're unemployed. But like this doesn't happen. And this is very interesting that it doesn't happen because, on one side you're entitled to the public service, to the social welfare. On the other side, you will not be given it unless you go through incredible, very draining process of proving your identity. If I owed taxes or if someone owed taxes, the state will make sure, because the state has enough money and capital to make sure that someone is themselves, and has enough mechanisms to find out who is who and who lives where, and But when it comes to providing public service, it decides to abandon this duty of care and act like an indifferent bystander who needs to be motivated to help and to care. By the person who is paying for the service. So the taxpayer is paying for the service, it's paying for the public servant to have a job, and then when they go and they ask for a social welfare, they're not given the social welfare until they fulfill a large number of conditions, as if they're not themselves. They have to prove that they are themselves. So for me, this is very puzzling. So I kind of naturally, the term evolved from this, citizen Cinderella. So we are like Cinderella. We live in our parents' home. Our parents worked and paid taxes to create and maintain the state. And we inherit this benefit by being a citizen of the state. But we will be treated with complete disrespect and abuse by the state. And this I find very confusing, because I think people who are faced with these services, one way or another, it's always like I look at people, because I felt this is really not right. Like, why do you have to abuse me like this? Like, I haven't done anything. I have been paying taxes, or I'm in difficulty. Maybe, I haven't paid taxes. Let's say I haven't paid taxes, but I'm in a difficult situation. And I'm looking for a way to move on. And this help is always temporary. The social welfare help is always temporary. It always comes with conditions. So it's fine, for a time being, we can, avail of such a social welfare, to find our footing, and to do something else in life, maybe change career, or it doesn't matter what it is. So in a way, in this most vulnerable state of our life, instead of receiving real support, we receive heavy pounding from social welfare services that come and say, oh, wait a minute, who are you? I don't know who you are. There is a form, like 20-page, 30-page form, 50-page form, where you have to prove who you are, with whom you're living. Even though all this is recorded, there is enough records to know. And if I owed money, they would know where I live and where I am to get the money off me. So it's not an equal service. When the state needs to take money, they know who you are, they know where you live, they know your circumstances. But when they have to give you support, they don't know who you are. It's like it's a heavy case of some kind of mental disorder, or dementia, or Alzheimer's, where the state is completely abandons its sanity in care provision. So it's actually, if if we had to guard, if we had to uh, test, the quality of the service, I don't know if the government services can pass the minimum standards of service at all that are required in the private sector, for example. So things need to change. Culture needs to change. Uh, one of the suggestions I have, which again it came as a result of observations, is to develop a public benefit index. And public benefit index is a system in which uh, the service receiver, so we are paying taxes, and we give this money that we pay in taxes to the government to provide services. So we need to be able to evaluate and monitor public spending and give rating to public spending. So, if we are happy with a particular public servant, we can give them good ratings so that they can be funded again. And if we're not happy with them, like if for example there is some development, and if we like it as citizens and we feel they've done a good job, this public servant should receive good rating and should be given more work if they are able to provide high quality service at a good price. And now what we find is, public services, all kinds of government services and public services, they go about and they do completely irrational public spending in like things that absolutely have very little to no effect on the lives of people that have paid the taxes. And they come back and they give this very, very clever, sleazy descriptions, and accuse the ones that ask uncomfortable questions, uh, in the hope that this maintains their public image and they can continue to receive the public, the high salary that they get for the service that they do. And this has become an epidemic now of public servants who cannot decide because there is this cultural division in the mind of the public servant. On one side, they want to be a public servant and they want to be paid as a public servant, protected as a public servant, receive a high salary and compensation as a public servant, and all kind of pampered care, which is absolutely protected. They cannot be fired, they cannot lose any of the benefits and everything. On the other hand, despite receiving all this, they will never be they will never be a subject to real attempts to find out how good of a job they're doing. So I find this very confusing because, like, if you're not doing a good job, I don't, like, nobody wants you. Nobody needs you. Like, you should kind of, decide this on your own. But, like, if you are, for whatever reason, really not able to make this decision on your own, like, we have no reason to keep you in public service. If you will be misusing public funds and misdirecting public funds that don't benefit the community and the taxpayers that have given this money. Especially now in politics, there is this trend for global, United Nations, global agendas, and it's like, okay, so nations are not allowed, even citizens are not allowed to ask questions, and nations are not allowed to ask, okay, how does this benefit our nation? There is this very weird assumption that the West is evil. And this is a very Marxist. I was raised as a Marxist atheist, so I know where it comes from. This is a religious belief that the West is evil, and the conclusion is reached by extremely limited and selective look on history. But this conclusion is reached, and the evil, the West is evil. Therefore, the West has to pay now because it's evil. It has to pay for something, like for the world to become a better place. And the West is already investing a lot of money in this, but no, it's not enough that the West is giving donations, incredible amounts of money to the United Nations, but this is not enough. Like, we have to say to the West that it's evil. Like they have to feel really bad, and we have to make them feel really bad. We will never say thank you for the money you gave and the support you gave. We will never list and acknowledge the support you gave. No, we will just turn like lunatics and say, no, the West is evil and the West has to pay. And, you know, well, I mean, like personally, like I know enough history to know, like, there are no saintly nations. And there's been plenty of abuse in Africa, in Europe, in Asia, in South America. There is no holy lands and holy places that are built on the assumption that nobody ever committed a crime against anybody and their neighbors. Even the whole idea that there is a nation means it had to be cut off. Looking back at history, you know, these lands, they didn't look like this in the past. So, you know, the previous nations had to be cut off and chopped and reshaped for this area to appear to the end, to have a name, to call it something. And the people that lived in it changed. There were some tribes and then other tribes, and then more came and mixed, and, you know, and now to say, oh, we have a clear identity and like this, it's actually very, very difficult to make a claim like this if we want to be really objective historically. So, in order not to add any more to the burden of mistrust and, you know, like hate and criticism, and because none of them helps. None of these things really help to make life better. So the only way we can make life better is to come up with a solution that is working. So, and there is no other system. I haven't found a system that works better than the loving family. Because the loving family is actually the reference we use when we talk about the utopian society or the true democracy or the heavenly kingdom. Because in a loving family, there is no religion, there is no money. People still live, people still move around and do things and develop, and, you know, but they don't. We don't hold against each other things to make our lives more difficult, because it's like if one child, like parents don't think like one child should develop and the other one should die, or let's enslave one of the children so that the other one can do better. Like, we cannot call this a loving family if it's the case. You know, a loving family is where, you know, there is equal opportunity, and a loving family is also the one where, because of all the love and care that the children received, like they can develop the awareness that they have been loved and they are loved and they have been loved, and the resultant commitment to love their parents back and take care of their parents as well. And this is not the culture and the life we have now, and especially it's not the progressive culture and the urbanization. This is not the result of urbanization. You know, we are more separate, we are more isolated through the urban culture. We don't know so many people. We don't know our neighbors many times in big cities, and we don't interact with them. While if one lives in the countryside, people know each other. People greet each other. There is no such opportunity for employment, but if one wanted to excel with their skills, a small community will always benefit from a person like this, and this person will benefit from the small community. So it's much more organic and you know, holistic. To have a smaller community and more kind of love-based and value-based system than one based on labor and capital. And so this is how, in my mind, I make the case for the family party that should be modeled after a loving family, um, in which, even if the parents are religious, there is no religious institution in the family. The parents just naturally share their beliefs, and the children can reject them if they don't find them compatible with their own understanding, which happens. So there are no money in the loving family. There is no exchange of money for value. There is no abuse in the loving family. Like the parents, even if the children are asked to help with work, it's more for mentorship, like to teach them skills, life skills, than to exploit them for benefit. And many times this idea comes that this is child abuse, child works, and it's like, well, I mean, this is one way to look at it, but the other way to look at it is, okay, this child is contributing to the family. I mean, the child is benefiting from the family. Like, it has all the settings necessary for their life provided to them: food, shelter, heat, cleaning, all the conditions are there, and the child is not required to do anything. So what is the problem if the child starts to learn that it will need to become such a person themselves? So it's very nice to have the life skills to take care of themselves and to take care of their own family. And capitalists and socialists can say this is labor, and the parents are abusing their child. But is the child abusing their parents when the parents provide and the child doesn't pay anything back? From this very divisive, and this is why I don't like the left and the right, because they come with these divisive, very hate-filled concepts, and at the end game of this is for some politician to milk the system, to game the system. There is no real divide unless the parents are not loving, and they're just seeking to, and in this case, this parent needs to receive some mental health support for being such a person and thinking like this. And in many cases, we were raised like this. We had to work from young age because societies were not affluent, and there wasn't enough to share. So children had to participate in creating the well-being of the family by participating in work on the fields, or taking care of crops, and taking care of animals. But this was a shared wealth and development of skills. So, like, if we send our children to school, we have to pay for the school. But if we teach the children ourselves, we're not allowed to to benefit from this. It's a very weird, very like limited, very weird, very satanic, I would say, concept. Very aggressive, anti-family, anti-parental concept. Like, after all the care parents provide and all the sacrifice they make, they're not allowed to teach their children to work and to provide for themselves and support their family. And they're not allowed to benefit from the work of their children. Even though, like, if you're a parent and you worked all your life, obviously your child benefits more from your work than you from theirs. But this kind of natural sharing is viewed by the capitalists and the socialists as something reprehensible, like evil. And I look at this and I'm like, are you mental? Like, are you so stupid that you cannot understand basic human relationships? You cannot quantify the efforts that the parents make because they don't fit into the capitalist or the socialist economic model. Well, how about we create a different system that this model can be factored in? Why are the capitalist and the socialist systems both benefiting from parents and from the work of the parents of taking care of their children, without expressing the level of gratitude that is owed? Why are parents expected to pay the salary of public servants, and ungrateful and mean and selfish public servants can abuse the public service that they've been allowed to participate in, which is intended to take care of the taxpayers and their needs, and they would use it to cater for their own needs, to look for high-paid corporate jobs when they leave the public service, by selling the interest of the taxpayers, and many times misdirecting even public funds to private corporations, which will hire them later on. So this is where a lot of shady things are happening in socialist and in capitalist countries, because there is no clear standard based on which we can decide what is public service and what is not. Whom are we serving? In a capitalist society, if we say it's a capitalist society, then we're serving the capitalist. In a socialist society, we're serving the proletarian. Does that create a good environment for living? Obviously not. So far it hasn't. Both the left and the right stand up and rightfully criticize the system because it is failing. But it's not failing because it's socialist and it's evil because it's socialist, or it's capitalist and it's evil. No, because there are selfish elements in the system, and they're set there as default because we assume not that we are taking care of families, but we are taking care of proletarians or capitalists. We're catering to companies or to the workers. And this shifting back and forth between catering for the workers because we want the votes, and catering for the companies because we want their money and donations for political activities, it's actually a sick system. It's a deranged system that is counterintuitive. It does not serve the needs of the taxpayer and the families and the citizens of the nation at a high enough standard. Because if these services were provided at a high enough standard, people would be happy. And we can see kind of by traveling around, I can see which nations are providing better opportunities for their citizens by somehow more sensibly distributing the collected money from taxes. But also, I see the systems where citizens have the self-awareness that they're active participants and regulators of the system. So many people say, North European countries, the Scandinavian countries, they have high standards. Oh, look, the politicians there are driving bicycles instead of buying expensive cars. But this is a moral decision. It's a moral decision of the politician to feel he doesn't deserve to drive an expensive car, because the community that he's serving will have to pay for it, and the fuel, and the maintenance. So they feel this is not righteous. It's not morally justified to be in such position to receive such benefits at taxpayer expense. So they would opt for the bicycle. And other nations, they don't display such a high level of morals in public service, and their politicians, they feel it's their right to receive, even not to receive like a normal car. They have to buy very high spec car with bulletproof glasses costing millions and millions to the taxpayer. So who else has a car like this? Nobody, because even billionaires, very rich people, they don't feel they need a car like this. They would rather, buy something to enjoy their life, like a fast sports car or some investment where they can, invest the money and, you know, that it keeps its value over time. So they would buy some rare car or something. But the presidential cars, the politician cars, that many nations buy, it's like, okay, we want to display that we have a powerful politician. And it's like, okay, but you do realize that all this luxury that you display is at the expense of the taxpayer. So let's look at the life of the taxpayer in your country. Let's see how they live and what is their standard of life, and decide if this expense is justified or not. If you can say that your citizens are affluent enough and they can afford similar cars, or maybe not similar cars but very nice new cars also, and they can afford to pay all their expenses and drive cars like this and enjoy life like yours or similar to yours, nearly everybody, all taxpayers, then, well, by all means, we should get you a bigger car because you provide great public service. But if you look around and you see like broken streets and broken infrastructure, and and you're driving a car like this, like I was working with the Roma community in Bulgaria, and spend a lot of time in the Roma neighborhoods, like ghetto kind of assigned areas where they live illegally. The land doesn't belong to them. The houses very rarely belong to them. There's no proper electricity and water provided to these neighborhoods. And politicians come to advertise themselves and their political agendas in cars that have the value of probably half the neighborhood. Like if you were to sell all these small shacks, and like, you wouldn't be able to get very much money for them. So in order to put together the money equivalent to the value of the car, you would probably have to sell the half of the neighborhood. So this disproportionate wealth of politicians, public servants, like they are public servants after all, and the people they serve is just shocking. And it's very hard to say anything because many of these politicians, they don't feel they're doing anything wrong. They feel like, yeah, well, the kings that have done this. They like to criticize the kings, the royal families, but they like to live in luxury themselves as public servants. So I'm looking at them and I'm like, okay, what's the difference? I don't see it. Maybe you don't call yourself a king or a member of the royal court, but you surely act like one. And nobody looks at themselves and says, oh, what kind of quality of public service I'm providing? Am I spending the public money really wisely? Or, because it's the biggest company in the country, the state is the biggest company in the country with the biggest monthly and annual income and expenditure. And because they believe they're being employed by this company, which is a company, like it doesn't, like, on one side, this company receives donations every month from the taxpayers, so it's a charity. On the other hand, it turns and says it's a company and treats people with disrespect, as if they didn't receive donations from the taxpayer. Taxes are not like, what is taxes? Taxes are donations. Yes, okay, we've created a system where the the state can collect involuntary donations and can punish people for not paying these involuntary donations because of the public good. Oh, we collect all these taxes because of the public good, because we need to provide services. Are you providing services to the taxpayer from which you collect tax money? And what is the standard to which this should happen? And my conclusion is it should happen to the standard of a loving family, where the public servant should not receive salary, not even the minimum salary, because parents don't receive the minimum salary because they're parents. They're committed to their family because of love, because they feel that their partners within the family unit are more precious than they are, and it makes sense to sacrifice yourself for their benefit. And in order to kind of create a society like this, we absolutely need a family party, because nothing else can create uh, the baseline to look on at society from this point of view. Capitalist um, principles will not provide this. Democratic principles cannot provide this. And socialist principles cannot provide this. Despite all the promises and efforts, socialism never created a moral citizen. And the reason why is because it's not based on love. It's based on, the system is not based on love. It's based on punishment and fear. That's why I call it the Marxist atheist cult, because I grew up in one. And everything was about punishment and fear. Nothing felt like, oh yeah, this is a really nice country and let's enjoy living in it. No, it was like, no, you cannot do this. No, you cannot do this. Oh, if you do this, you'll go to prison or jail. Or it's like, okay, what can I do? Well, we'll tell you later. You know, okay. Is this happiness? Is this like what you really want from life? Not really. No. Do you want the educationally failing children of the elites of the Communist Party to manage factories, or to become doctors, or to become engineers, despite not really knowing what they're doing? This is why socialism failed, because the children of the leaders of the Communist Party, they had to be leaders in factories. It was a dynasty. It's like dynasties. But at least the royal families, they understood it's important to educate your children, and in many cases they understood. Some had the qualities, others didn't. Not that always it was successful. There is a lot of abuse in the monarchy system as well. But that's why I think it's not a good comparison. Socialism, can look back and criticize capitalism and the monarchic system all it wants, but it never looks at itself and criticizes itself for not creating the moral citizens that the utopian society needs to exist. Because these moral citizens, they grow through love and through care. Because when someone is loved and cared for, they develop the natural desire to love and care for others as well. And this is my case for the Family Party. I feel it's a very important organization, and the baseline for the Family Party is the standard exercised in the loving family. And that's all for me.